On December 27, 2021, Lyndon McLeod launched a deadly, targeted shooting spree across Denver and Lakewood, killing 5 people he knew. A self-published author with extremist views, McLeod's violent rampage left the community in shock until a final showdown with police ended the chaos. This is the story of a calculated killer and the tragic aftermath. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth true crime stories and updates on the cases that matter. Let's get started. Lyndon McLeod was a 47-year-old man with a complex and troubled background. Originally from Colorado, he spent much of his early adult life working in the tattoo industry. McLeod was a tattoo shop owner and had built relationships within that community. While he appeared to be an ordinary business owner on the surface, those close to him would later describe him as someone with deeply held grievances, extreme beliefs, and a growing sense of isolation. As McLeod moved further away from his career in the tattoo industry, he began to focus on writing. He self-published a series of books under the pen name Roman McClay, the most well-known of which was a trilogy titled Sanction. These books were filled with violent fantasies, often featuring a protagonist who, much like McLeod himself, harbored extremist views and took deadly actions against people he saw as enemies or symbols of societal decay. Disturbingly, the protagonist in Sanction carried out acts of violence that bore a chilling resemblance to the real-world attacks McLeod would later commit. In his writing, McLeod openly expressed his admiration for violent and radical ideologies. He embraced themes of racial purity, the rejection of modern society, and a belief in a Nietzschean concept of the Superman, where individuals with superior abilities or intellect could transcend societal norms, even if it meant resorting to violence. He saw himself as one of these individuals. His writings didn't just hint at violence, they often glorified it, with scenes of brutal revenge against those McLeod perceived as weak or inferior. McLeod's erratic behavior wasn't limited to his books. Over time, he became increasingly disconnected from those around him, particularly as his radical views intensified. He would often lash out verbally at people he felt had wronged him, and his paranoia grew as he distanced himself from former friends and acquaintances. People who knew him described him as someone who was volatile, prone to anger, and deeply distrustful of others. This behavior became especially alarming when he started to express a desire to act on the violent fantasies detailed in his writings. In the years leading up to the attacks, McLeod's alarming behavior didn't go unnoticed. Several individuals who had interacted with him reported their concerns to law enforcement, fearing that his radical views and obsession with violence could lead to something dangerous. Despite these warnings, no significant actions were taken by authorities to investigate or intervene in McLeod's life. Some of these reports were filed as early as 2020, when McLeod was exhibiting increasingly unstable behavior. However, due to a lack of concrete evidence or direct threats at the time, these warnings were not acted upon in a way that might have prevented the eventual tragedy. McLeod's writings, along with his interactions with those around him, painted a clear picture of a man descending into an obsession with violence. His belief that society was decaying, combined with his growing sense of personal betrayal by those he once considered friends or allies, fueled his anger and drove him toward an inevitable breaking point. His erratic behavior, extremist views, and detailed fantasies of violence were warning signs that many in his orbit tried to raise before it was too late. On December 27, 2021, Lyndon McLeod launched his deadly attack beginning at 2 tattoo shops in Denver. These locations were not random, they were carefully chosen. McLeod had a long history with the people in these shops, and his first targets were individuals he knew personally. His motives appeared deeply rooted in past grievances, specifically tied to people in the tattoo industry with whom he had worked and later became estranged. The first location McLeod targeted was Saul Tribe Tattoo, a popular and well-established tattoo and piercing shop located on Broadway in Denver. At approximately 5:25 p.m., McLeod entered the shop and opened fire. Among the victims at Saul Tribe was Alicia Cardenas, the shop's owner. Cardenas was a respected figure in Denver's tattoo community, known not just for her work as an artist, but also as a mentor and leader within the industry. She had a long-standing history in the Denver area, and her shop had become a local institution. McLeod and Cardenas had known each other for many years, as McLeod had previously been part of the same tattoo scene. While the exact nature of their falling out is unclear, it is believed that McLeod harbored personal and professional grudges against her, possibly related to his eventual estrangement from the community. His decision to target Saul Tribe suggests that his attack was fueled by a deeply personal vendetta. In the same attack, McLeod also fatally shot Alicia Gunn Maldonado, a tattoo artist who worked at Saul Tribe. Gunn Maldonado was highly regarded within the community and had built a name for herself as a skilled and creative artist. Tragically, her husband, Jimmy Maldonado, was also shot in the attack, though he survived his injuries. Eyewitnesses reported hearing gunshots and seeing McLeod flee the scene immediately after the attack, leaving chaos and devastation in his wake. Shortly after the shooting at Saul Tribe, McLeod moved to his second target. He arrived at a nearby residential area where he attacked a second location tied to the tattoo industry. At this second site, McLeod encountered Michael Swinyard, a man who had once been connected to McLeod's circle of acquaintances in the tattoo scene. Swinyard was shot and killed at his home. Much like his previous targets, Swinyard was not a stranger to McLeod, and it's believed that McLeod had personal reasons for targeting him, though the exact nature of their conflict has not been fully revealed. Surveillance footage and witness statements played a crucial role in piecing together McLeod's actions that day. Security cameras from local businesses captured McLeod's vehicle fleeing the scene of the first attack. Witnesses at Saul Tribe and nearby locations described a chaotic and terrifying scene, with gunfire erupting and people scrambling to take cover. Those who survived the initial attack were able to provide descriptions of McLeod and his vehicle, which became critical information for law enforcement. The response from authorities was swift. Denver police, already dealing with a high volume of calls during the holiday season, quickly arrived at the scene of the first shooting. They cordoned off the area and began searching for McLeod, but by the time officers arrived, he had already fled. Despite the initial chaos, law enforcement was able to gather crucial evidence from the crime scenes, including bullet casings and witness testimony. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear to police that this was not an isolated attack, but part of a larger, calculated plan. The fact that McLeod had targeted specific individuals suggested premeditation, and authorities immediately launched a citywide manhunt to track him down before he could strike again. Denver police worked alongside other local law enforcement agencies to set up roadblocks and monitor surveillance footage in an effort to locate McLeod as quickly as possible. Despite the overwhelming response, McLeod remained elusive in the hours immediately following the shootings. The attacks left the Denver community in shock as news spread about the victims and their connections to McLeod. The tattoo community in particular was devastated by the loss of Alicia Cardenas and Alicia Gunn Maldonado, both of whom were beloved figures in the industry. Their deaths marked the tragic beginning of what would become a deadly rampage across the Denver and Lakewood areas. After the initial attacks at the two Denver tattoo shop locations, Lyndon McLeod continued his rampage, targeting multiple other locations across Denver and Lakewood. His actions over the course of that evening followed a deliberate pattern, each victim carefully chosen based on past personal grievances or connections to his earlier life. Following the fatal shootings at Saul Tribe Tattoo and the nearby residence where Michael Swinyard was killed, McLeod's next target was another individual with whom he had a personal history. McLeod moved toward James Jim Tolliver, a former business associate. Tolliver had been part of the same circle as McLeod, involved in a failed business venture related to real estate and entrepreneurship. Their falling out had left McLeod bitter, and Tolliver became another name on his list. McLeod tracked Tolliver down to a home located in Denver where he attempted to carry out his attack. Tolliver, however, wasn't present at the time, and McLeod's plans were temporarily disrupted. McLeod had clearly spent time planning his attacks, driven not only by past frustrations but by a desire for revenge against those he felt had wronged him. While he was unable to find Tolliver at the home, McLeod's next actions showed just how determined he was to carry out his deadly plan. From there, McLeod headed toward Lakewood, a city west of Denver. His next stop was Lucky 13 Tattoo, a shop located on Kipling Street. McLeod's connection to this location stemmed from his past interactions within the tattoo industry. He had previously had disputes with individuals in this community, and it's believed that his long-held resentment fueled this attack. When McLeod entered the shop, he encountered Danny Schofield, a tattoo artist working there. Schofield became McLeod's next victim, shot and killed in what appeared to be another act of personal revenge. As with the previous attacks, McLeod targeted people he knew or had ties with, showing a clear pattern in his choice of victims. His violent outbursts were not random, but part of a methodical plan. Each location, whether a tattoo shop or a private residence, reflected his personal connections to the victims and his grievances against them. His actions were fueled by past failures, estrangements, and perceived betrayals that he could no longer contain. At this point, McLeod's spree had drawn the full attention of law enforcement across the region. Authorities from both Denver and Lakewood were actively searching for him, using information from witness statements, security footage, and crime scene evidence to track his movements. However, McLeod continued to evade capture, moving swiftly between locations. Shortly after the attack at Lucky 13 Tattoo, McLeod traveled to yet another location, this time a hotel in Lakewood. It was here that he encountered Sarah Steck, a young hotel clerk. Steck was not part of McLeod's personal vendetta. Unlike his previous victims, she had no known connection to him. The reason McLeod targeted her remains unclear, but it may have been because she worked at the front desk of the hotel, representing another opportunity for McLeod to continue his spree. McLeod shot and killed Steck, leaving her as the final victim of his rampage. This deviation from his original pattern, killing someone seemingly unrelated to his past, underscored the increasingly erratic and dangerous nature of his actions. Throughout the night, McLeod's attacks displayed a clear pattern of targeting individuals with whom he had a history. His grievances stemmed from his failed relationships in the tattoo industry, business ventures gone awry, and personal disagreements that had festered over time. These long-standing resentments drove him to take violent action against those he believed had wronged him in some way. By the time McLeod reached the hotel where Steck was killed, law enforcement had pieced together enough information to understand the scale of his deadly plan. Authorities were racing against the clock to apprehend him before he could strike again. Each location McLeod visited left behind devastation and trauma as the community struggled to comprehend the unfolding events. His careful targeting of people from his past reflected his desire for vengeance, but with Steck's death, it became clear that his spree had spiraled into uncontrollable violence. Denver police responded swiftly to the first shooting at Soul Tribe. Officers arrived on the scene within minutes of receiving the 911 calls, finding the victims and attempting to secure the area. However, by the time they arrived, McLeod had already fled, leaving behind chaos and devastation. Realizing that the gunman was still at large, the police immediately began gathering information from witnesses and reviewing available security footage in an attempt to piece together McLeod's movements. The urgency of the situation escalated as law enforcement realized that McLeod had continued his spree, targeting multiple locations. Officers on the ground began communicating with various dispatchers, who were fielding an overwhelming number of calls from the public. They worked to gather and share descriptions of the suspect, his vehicle, and any other details that could help track him down. Witnesses at the tattoo shop described McLeod's appearance and vehicle, while security cameras from local businesses provided additional footage that confirmed these details. As the day progressed, McLeod continued to move between locations. The Denver Police Department, in collaboration with Lakewood Police, began a citywide manhunt to locate and apprehend the shooter. This involved not only officers on the ground, but also helicopters and drones being deployed to track McLeod's vehicle. Traffic cameras and private surveillance footage were crucial tools in determining McLeod's route. Detectives and forensic teams at the crime scenes worked rapidly to collect evidence, but the fast-moving nature of the attacks made it difficult to stay ahead of McLeod's path of destruction. Law enforcement soon realized that McLeod's actions were highly targeted, which presented a new level of danger. His victims were not random, and the personal nature of his attacks suggested that he had a clear plan and more potential targets in mind. This created a sense of extreme urgency, as police feared McLeod would continue targeting individuals from his past unless they could stop him. Detectives quickly began investigating McLeod's background, looking for possible connections between him and the victims in hopes of predicting his next move. Throughout the evening, authorities worked tirelessly to track McLeod. As reports of additional shootings came in, officers responded to each scene as quickly as possible, but McLeod remained elusive, frequently changing locations. In some instances, police arrived moments after McLeod had left, leading to a high-speed chase across the Denver and Lakewood areas. The chaotic nature of the manhunt stretched law enforcement resources, with officers racing to keep up with McLeod's movements. One of the most critical moments came after the attack at Lucky 13 Tattoo in Lakewood. By this point, police had narrowed down McLeod's vehicle description and were coordinating a widespread search. Witnesses provided additional details that allowed authorities to further refine their search efforts. Officers worked with urgency, knowing that each passing minute increased the likelihood that McLeod would strike again. As the day wore on, authorities had been tracking McLeod's movements across multiple crime scenes, and after the attack at Lucky 13 Tattoo, police narrowed down their search. Witness reports and surveillance footage indicated that McLeod had fled in his vehicle toward the Belmar area of Lakewood. His actions, now involving multiple shootings and several fatalities, set off an intense manhunt as law enforcement from both Denver and Lakewood worked together to find him before he could strike again. At approximately 6 p.m., McLeod was spotted in the vicinity of the Belmar shopping district, an area in Lakewood known for its bustling stores and restaurants. A Lakewood police officer, Agent Ashley Ferris, responded to the scene after receiving reports of gunfire in the area. It was here that McLeod's violent spree would come to a decisive and tragic end. McLeod, still armed and dangerous, was driving a black van and had been spotted by officers as he made his way through the busy streets. As soon as the police caught up to him, a high-speed chase ensued. McLeod, desperate to evade capture, drove recklessly, endangering the lives of both pedestrians and other drivers as he attempted to flee from law enforcement. The pursuit through Lakewood was tense, with McLeod clearly showing no intention of surrendering peacefully. Eventually, McLeod's van came to a stop near the Belmar shopping area, where he exited his vehicle and began walking through the district. At this point, Agent Ferris, along with other responding officers, was in the area searching for McLeod. As Ferris approached him, McLeod, without hesitation, opened fire on her, striking her in the abdomen. Despite her serious injury, Ferris was able to return fire, hitting McLeod multiple times. The exchange of gunfire was brief but intense, with McLeod fatally wounded in the confrontation. McLeod collapsed from his injuries and was later pronounced dead at the scene. His death marked the end of a rampage that had claimed the lives of 5 innocent people across 2 cities and left a community in shock. Ferris, though critically wounded, was rushed to the hospital and later credited with ending the violent spree, preventing any further loss of life. Her bravery in the face of extreme danger was widely recognized, as her quick response and ability to act under pressure were instrumental in bringing McLeod's rampage to an end. The shootout in Lakewood was the final violent chapter in McLeod's series of calculated and targeted attacks. Throughout the day, McLeod had chosen specific victims, many of whom he knew personally, and with whom he had long-standing grievances. However, his final confrontation with law enforcement in Lakewood was the result of intense and coordinated efforts by police to track him down and prevent further bloodshed. In the wake of McLeod's death, the investigation into his motives and actions continued as law enforcement worked to piece together the details of his crime spree. But the immediate danger had passed thanks to the swift actions of officers like Agent Ferris, who risked their lives to stop him. Thanks for watching. If you found this story insightful and want to stay updated on more true crime cases, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. We have plenty more deep dives and case updates coming your way, so make sure you turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.